and African Americans, a vision of healing, solidarity, and collective empowerment. And so, our conversation today will look at where that vision stands. We'll talk about the misconceptions that divide us, the shared struggles of systemic racism, the relevance of Pan-African unity today, and of course, this year's commemoration of Du Bois' life and legacy. I'm joined in studio now by Japhet Aryiku. Mr. Japhet Aryiku, he is Executive Director of W.E.B Museum Foundation, and also Whitney Battle Baptist, and she is a director of the W.E.B Du Bois Center at UMass Amherst. I hope I got that right. Okay. Good morning. You're welcome to the Business Breakfast on Z.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have the two of you. All right. So we're talking about W.E.B Du Bois. Maybe I should just start on a very basic note. Maybe you can share, did you have an experience with him personally in any way? And I'm sure Japhet Aryiku would be the best person to speak to that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. This is my second appearance here in the studio.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, I think I was here a year or two ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a wonderful conversation with Honorable Fritz Balfour.
Oh, yeah.
We celebrated.
He's a big man.
Yes. So, I always say that I met Du Bois when I was 13, 14 years old. And then people are taken aback. Because, really? And then I sort of clarified the story. And the story is that in my high school days, I went to our first library session. We're looking through the collection of books. And the very first book that I picked up was a red rectangular book. And the title of the book was Souls of Black Folk. Wow, W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, I had heard of him, but I never really read anything about him. And in fact, I was flipping through the book, and there was no way that I could read it at my level. I could really read to understand it. But for some strange reason, I don't know why I call it strange, I was able to memorize the first paragraph of the second chapter, Dawn of Freedom, which went like this, that the problem of the 20th century is a problem of the color line, the relation of the darker to the lighter races of men in Asia, Africa, America, and the islands of the seas. It's like, I memorized that. I don't know how I did it, but I memorized that within that 45-minute period. And so instantly I became a Du Bois scholar on campus. You can imagine, boarding school, and I saw my friends get it. The problem with this is just, Japhet, give us a break,
Right.
So anyway, so this was way back in the 60s. So I forgot about all of that. And then all of a sudden, Du Bois came into my life again in 2014. And I went to his graveside, and I'm standing by his graveside. All of a sudden, this thing that I memorized 60 years ago, 64 years ago, came back to me. Again. And I said, wow, maybe God was sort of preparing me for something for Du Bois. So that's how I got to know Du Bois. And since then, I'm committed to raising his profile in Ghana and honoring his memory and legacy here in Ghana.
And you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Whitney, how about you? Do you have an experience with him or not directly?
Yes, well, I do. I too had heard of W.E.B. Du Bois growing up. My mom was a history teacher, so it was automatic for us to learn about, leaders, Black leaders in the U.S. And but in the 60s, at the end of the 60s, when my mom graduated from college, she took a month-long trip with her cousin, and they came to Ghana. And one of the reasons why they came was Du Bois's notion of this Pan-Africanism. And so this is the late 60s, early 70s. I'm an early 70s baby, so I grew up with an Afro and Black Power, as my initial entry into the world. But knowing Du Bois from that sense and associating him with Ghana was something that just seemed it seemed natural, it seemed a part of my life. Right. I didn't know when I came to the University of Massachusetts in the US that I would be at the place that holds all of his papers. And from there, my relationship in 2007 continued to grow. And I think with all of us Du Bois scholars, once you begin to read Du Bois and learn about Du Bois, it's almost as if he cannot let you go because there is unfinished business and there's still a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do. Wow, great. So let's get into. I got to know about him, I think, when I was in junior high school. We had the opportunity to go to the center for a drama competition, something like that. I used to be an actor, so yeah. So that's how I got to know about him, and I mean, read about him doing amazing things and all of that. So it's good we are trying to, put some spotlight on him, so a lot more people get to hear about some of the things that he did. But one of the things that he was so much interested in was the bond between Africans and African Americans, really. And I want us to get into the conversation from that angle. We'll talk about the history briefly, because so much of today's tension between Africans and African Americans is rooted in how we understand the past. And many African Americans feel betrayed by history, believing that Africans sold them into slavery and all of that. How should this painful narrative be unpacked, and what truths are often overlooked? And I'll start with you, Japhet.
Yeah, well, the question of the relationship between Africans and African Americans is something I've been festering for a while. I don't really believe that there is any tension between us, really. At least in my experience, 54 years experience in the U.S., I really don't think so. Okay. I think there's a sense of admiration of with the Africans having come to the U.S. and trying to make good, and I have a sense of admiration, to tell the truth, of the struggles of the African Americans in the U.S. and making it possible for someone like me to go there and be accepted and do well. I mean, I worked in the banking industry. Wow. I became a vice president at JP Morgan Chase. Now, I know that there's no way that an African boy going to the U.S. will be successful, but it is so because sort of benefit from the struggles and legacies of the African Americans who struggle over the years, for equal rights and equal opportunities and all of that. So my look at the relationship is very positive. I'm very happy that the African Americans are coming in droves to Africa, to Ghana. I'm happy that our African leaders are making it easier for African Americans to get citizenship in the African countries and all that. So Du Bois earlier, very, very early in the 30s, recognized the importance of that relationship, and therefore he mentored most of the African leaders who fought for independence for the African continent, Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Jomo Kenyatta, Kamuzu Banda. All of these guys were young scholars in the UK, and he mentored them and encouraged them to come to the continent to fight for the emancipation of the continent. So. And I think the younger generation of African Americans are following that. Here's Whitney, who is very committed. She just loves Ghana, and she hasn't expressed any kind of resentment. So I think there's a little bit of a fallacy about the fact that African Americans are saying that we sold them into slavery. I think it's a white narrative that's trying to divide us.
Whitney, do you have anything to add?
Of course. I think that it is mythology, because I feel like there's a common factor in this miseducation, and that is colonialism and white supremacy, to see the idea that how can a diasporic person ever relate to a country or a continent that they've never been to, they have no connection with. However, if we look at the civil rights movement and some of our leaders there, and the first person that I think of is Malcolm X or El-Haj El-Shabazz, coming and visiting Shirley Graham Du Bois while she is in Ghana, Maya Angelou, and you look at the connections. And again, Pan-Africanism is not a bad word. If African Americans move beyond what our limited United States history is, it is a history of slavery, but it is a history of accomplishment and resilience. However, we also need, as students, as young people, we also need to learn about, Patrice Lumumba or Kwame Nkrumah and the relationships of how African nations became independent in a moment where no one believed that it could happen. And so I think that the connection, the thread is across the ocean is way thicker than some of us believe. And that is why, I'm going to say it, that is why in the US, history and education is they're trying to bring it down, trying to erase the history of slavery or calm it down so that everyone is comfortable. African Americans should never be comfortable with a repression of our history, our past, but most essentially our connection to the Caribbean, South America, as well as the African continent.
Absolutely, absolutely. But beyond all of that, what are some of the misconceptions Africans hold about African Americans and vice versa? And I'll start with you, Japhet, once again.
Yeah, misconceptions. I don't know. Maybe sort of I've been exposed to to the U.S. for such a long time. I may have lost my any misconception I may have had of the relationship. But I think though that before I went to the U.S., I used to read the Ebony magazine, Time magazine, and I was very much interested in the history and the challenges of the African Americans. I also got tutored by an African American who encouraged me and said, Japhet, I will encourage you to go to the U.S. to study, but don't stay there. Yeah, she said, don't stay there. Get your degree and come back home because you have your own country. I said, okay. And then I went to the U.S. and then sort of Broadway just sucked me in. And P.S. 54 years later, I'm still there. But I think it's for a good cause because now I have the opportunity to work on reviving the legacy of one of the greatest African Americans of all time, W.E.B. Du Bois. Yeah. You know, when he died here in 1963, Kwame Nkrumah was hoping that he would become a beacon, he would become a light for him in his effort to unite the the African continent and all that. He believed so much in Du Bois, and he took inspiration from him. Unfortunately, in 1966, February 24th, 1966, just imagine this, the day after the 98th birthday of Du Bois, he will have been 98 in 1966. February 23rd. Shirley Graham goes up, probably celebrates him, goes to the grave, lays some wreath. The following day, February 24th, there was a coup d'etat. Coup d'etat. That wiped out everybody. Anybody that was connected with Kwame Nkrumah was persona non grata. And that stopped the revolution. And so Du Bois laid here, worshipped, spoken about, until 1985, 84, when Jelly Rollins had the idea of building a Du Bois Center for him. So there's a lot of things that we need to uncover and try to restore. I talked to a lot of Ghanaians, have you been to Du Bois Center? Oh, yeah, I was there. What did you go there to do? Oh, I went there for a wedding, a funeral, or some kind of a celebration. Not going there to visit the Du Bois Center to learn about who Du Bois was and his contribution to Africa, to Ghana, and the progress of the non-aligned nations and all that. So we have a lot of work to do.
That's true.
And so African Americans are embracing us. I mean, they come in their numbers and they are happy to be here in Ghana and to see us. Likewise, we go there and we love our brothers and sisters there. So I think it's a good story, and we have a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do. You have something to add to that, Winnie?
No, I think Japhet said
You're fine.
Yeah.
Right, but if we are to move on even further together, how can open and honest dialogue bridge that little mistrust? I mean, of course, we're touting all the good things that are there, but of course, there's still some thin line that we need to deal with. So how do we do that? How can we make open and honest dialogue bridge that mistrust? Wouldn't you?
Well, I think it's interesting that the thing that stuck out that Japhet just said is having a country. And I think that is one of the insecurities of being African American, the descendant of slavery, right? Because unless you do a DNA testing, genealogy, you might find out what region you're from. However, knowing exactly where we come from, and I grew up in New York City among a lot of Caribbean Americans. And one of the debates we would have, and this is not even the African continent, this is just the Caribbean, was we have a flag, you don't. And I was like, oh, we do have a flag. It's Marcus Garvey's flag. But, the idea of, and I grew up learning about the UNIA and going back to Africa. I learned about Du Bois. I learned about, and for me, January 1st is important, not just the first day, but it is also Haitian Revolution. It is independence. And so it's interesting but I also grew up in a global thinking household where Africa wasn't a place of mistrust. It had nothing to do with us. Because if you think about, for generations, the goal was to prove that African Americans were worthy of equality. So we had to be as American as possible so that we kind of downplay our Africanness. And this is the conflict between Black power, civil rights. Civil rights is we are, Brown v. versus Board of Education. We need integration. And then there were people who believed when we had things that were our own, we were much more secure in our communities. We were much more secure, whether it was South or North, East or West in the US. And I think that it's important to understand that it is about getting out of our comfort zone and expanding it and understanding that places like Ghana, and sometimes people are afraid to go places where they don't speak English, which is also living in a monolingual country where everyone is supposed to just speak one language is very isolating. Yeah. And so if you actually expand that, there's so many things other than just speaking other languages. It is learning histories of African people across the world. And I think that is something that we are often limited to, because it's like we have civil rights and that's about it. And that's kind of where sometimes it ends.
There's a lot of what you want to add something.
And I think it is for this reason that Du Bois was so excited about coming to Ghana to launch the Encyclopedia Africana. Yeah. Okay, which was a project to document and to let the world know about the contribution of Black people to world history and culture and all of that. So I don't know. The way you're asking the question is as if you know that there is some kind of a conflict between Africans and African Americans. In my view, there's
nothing like that. Right.
I don't think so. I don't think there's
I think we've made a lot of progress, and that is something we need to highlight. And so so let's move away from that. Now, Du Bois didn't just speak about history. He fought against the ongoing realities of racism, right? Yep. And the struggle, and that struggle is not confined to America. People make it look like that. I mean, racism is often seen as an African American struggle, but Africans themselves also face some systemic discrimination here or there, particularly in global spaces. For example, even acquiring a U.S. visa today is an uphill battle. How does this reflect systemic racism? And I don't know, Whitney.
I can, it is hard. A year ago, maybe I would have answered this question a little differently. I think that it is very unfortunate that our current, the administration, I'm not claiming it, but the administration, our government right now is really, it seems vengeful. It just feels vengeful to think about being taught the narrative of school. We are a nation of immigrants. I heard that growing up. I understood, as also having indigenous heritage, I understood that means something as well, because the entire United States, is stolen land, for that matter. However, this idea of limiting certain countries from people coming in, it's about talent, it's about opportunity, it's about all of these factors that are now being limited, but it is happening alongside of limiting what we can teach in school. Right. It is limiting what is now in our museums. There are so many ways that we are seeing firsthand kind of what I would call a pendulum swing back almost before Du Bois's time, and which is so scary because there are so many relevant arguments and issues that Du Bois spoke about, that I feel like we are, in the United States, we are fighting right now to the point where, people are afraid. I'm in a professional organization, and we have international folks that usually come.
Right.
None of them are coming for fear of not being able to get a visa, not being able to get in or get out. All of these fears are something that I don't think has been a part of our lifetime, and now it is coming back. And I think it is a statement that perhaps, I would love a united Africa, which I think is scary to the West. But I think that the resources and the riches, not just intelligence, material resources, people, all of that is being limited, and you can't limit that. And I think that it's a reflection. We have a movement of what is being called anti-intellectualism in the U.S. The less people know, the less people understand what they're missing, I think. And I think that's what's happening now with our government, and it's a scary moment that I hope some of us continue to fight against, but it's going to be a battle.
Right. Japhet, you have something to say to that?
Well, systemic racism, has been with us for a long time, and it continues to be with us. In fact, I've always said that one of the biggest understatements by Du Bois is to say that the problem of the color line is limited to the 20th century. No, that was the biggest understatement that he ever made. The problem of the color line has always been with humanity, since inception of humanity.
That's true.
Even within our own country, we have a problem with the color line. There's the lighter people among us and all that. And then, you translate from the color line, because you're still looking at the US, but in our own country, tribalism, one tribe against another and all of that. A difficult thing that we have to try to reconcile. But I think it's a problem that we are still finding solutions for, and that's one of the reasons why we want to build a Du Bois Center, so the Du Bois Center will become a center where people will come and debate these questions and find answers to them.
Right.
How do we live as humans, in Africa, all around the world? That one people, forget about the color line, forget about how you look, but are you a human being? Are you a good person that we can all live together? So that's one of the missions of the Du Bois Center. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So that we can all live together. Appreciate humanity for what it is.
Yep.
But would you say the fight against racism today needs a more global approach than it currently has?
Oh, and I think it is. I think it has become a global fight. I was watching television the other day in the UK, where they are fighting against, the government is trying to come up with some kind of immigration law limiting, people from coming in, doing away with immigrants that are in hotels and all of that. The same fight is going on in the US, is going on in France. So I think there's a global, attention to the fight against racism, and it will continue and it will get better. And I think eventually we're all going to realize that we're one people. I think the scary part is that brown people are, we are growing in numbers.
In numbers, yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that is a scary part of the whole equation. But you can't stop it.
You can't stop it. Right. Okay. We need
two quick points. And I use the term, and I say this often in my classes, I don't say minority because we are minoritized in the US. We are the global majority. When you begin to say global majority, then you realize you shift the focus, right? So if I for me, the center is Africa, and everything comes out. And I'm also an anthropologist, so I realized that human beings started on this continent. So everyone is technically African. However, that is a very controversial, even though it's scientifically proven, it's still a battle, right? And it's still debatable. But I think that it is very interesting that if we think about, like, I remember my father not liking the term black, because when he was growing up, it was used as a weapon against African Americans. So then we shift because of Jesse Jackson's contribution to saying African American with a hyphen, and then we take out the hyphen, and then all of these debates about what we are called or what we call ourselves. And what I realized thinking globally is that the word Black, when I've used it in Sao Paulo in Brazil, whether I've used it in Cali, Colombia, whether I've used it in Ireland, whether I've used it in different places, what that does is it creates this collaborative family that you understand that we have something in common. It's called colonialism. It's called the impact that white supremacy has had on us in different places across the planet. And we are everywhere. So just, to say that I think that word Black helps me to think beyond the borders of the United States, even to Mexico and Canada, because often when we say America, we're just talking about the United States and working with a lot of people in the global South, they say, but we're also Americans and we're in South America. Yeah. And then there's Central America. So it's also to push folks in the United States to think beyond, we're the center of everything and we're the first world. I mean, growing up listening to first world, third world, develop, and it was just, you're told from the time you were born on the inferiority of certain peoples versus others. And I don't know, but I look around and I look at my own country and the things that were invented by people of African descent, and I think that we have a corner on the market of just about everything. So I think that Black to me is a term of unity and is a term of strength and very powerful. Right.
Okay, still on the issue of the global nature of racism. What does it mean for our ability to unite as one Black community across borders? What does that mean? Whitney, you want to touch on that?
What does that mean? Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah, the global nature of racism.
I would love for that to happen. But I don't. The challenge is in our own local spaces, how the struggles that we often have within our school systems, our workplaces, our families, our neighborhoods. What happens when that comes is it almost you don't have the energy to then look beyond because you're fighting your own everyday struggles. And I think that learning through someone like Du Bois and Du Bois's work, because he did say everything he did to his best ability and things that he left undone for future generations. And I think that this is why Du Bois becomes a central figure, because it's not only Pan-Africanism, but it is about African Americans understanding their importance in the history of the world, civil rights, the kinds of things that we had to fight in the U.S. as being examples, but also hopefully looking at examples of other things that we've exported that have taken taken a turn to create powerful aspects of like I think of, and I often I can't do an interview without talking about hip hop. So like I'm 50 plus, so I'm the hip hop generation. And for me, hip hop came about when Black youth were disenfranchised, they were unemployed. There was this thing called the Cross Bronx Expressway that literally physically cut off African American neighborhoods from the rest of New York City. Yeah. And what that did was, and also music and recreation was taken out of public schools. So what the response was from newly arriving migrants from the South, newly arriving folks from Puerto Rico, which is a part of the U.S., and folks from places like Jamaica, coming together as a youth movement to talk about what was happening in their lives. That's what hip hop is. It wasn't just about materialism. And from that beginning, I would say, unfortunately now, that I think that hip hop is more real outside of the U.S. than it actually is inside the U.S. But it becomes a way of communication for the youth, for people who feel disenfranchised. And for me, that is a part of that connection of that future generation, using hip hop for political, elections in places like Senegal, or, bringing Swahili back to Kenya in a way that was from underground radio. These are things that hip hop contributed to a larger voice of young people. And again, it's a mechanism. It's a tool that we need to use and acknowledge, and not just think that hip hop is about, I don't know. Just leave it like that. I don't even know how to end
She's
that.
very good.
She's very good. Right. Okay. So of course, Du Bois also one of his dreams was Pan-African unity, isn't it? Mm-hmm. A vision that actually drew him to Ghana in his final years. Yep. What lessons from his life and legacy remain what we call the unfinished business, really, for Africans and African Americans today? Japhet.
Well, there are so many unfinished business. I think one of the saddest thing that we can think of is the inability for the African continent to sort of come together to form the union that he has so much hope for. And we know what happened with that. Again, the 1966 coup d'etat played a very, very significant role. By the way, next year will be the 60th anniversary of the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah. We're hoping to have a big event to talk about the impact of this overthrow on Ghana, on Africa, and all of that. So the unfinished business, again, number one, is finding African continents and the leaders finding a way to unite. Let's open up our borders for economic development and all of that. In fact, Du Bois warned us back in 1959 in a speech from China to Africa, telling them that Africans have to be careful in terms of going out to the West, become dependent upon the West for loans and all that. That we need to be self-reliant on our own self. He warned us, and right now all of the African countries are indebted to the IMF or to some other, and so
Western
we can't
countries.
do anything.
That's true.
Okay, and Du Bois warned us against that. So these are all lessons that perhaps if we read Du Bois and if we learn about Du Bois, the younger generation, your generation, we are, your generation can take up the lessons and say, let's follow Du Bois's advice and all of that. One of the saddest things that I just learned about is that the fight between the Congo, the Republic of Congo, and Rwanda, for 30 years we're fighting. Supposedly, they resolved the fight in Washington. Trump is taking credit for resolving the conflict between Congo and Rwanda, two African countries, my brother. Are we saying that the African Union couldn't resolve this, and then we have to go to the West to get it resolved? What does that do to our unity? What does that do to our pride and all of that? And I think the other unfinished big business is the Encyclopedia Africana. Unfortunately, 3 volumes were published after he died. It's a huge project that we need to revive it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about documenting the contribution, the achievement of Black people to world history and culture. That is something that is also going to be part of the Du Bois Center that we're hoping to rebuild and make it part of our project, and to produce the Encyclopedia Africana for everybody to know the legacy of Du Bois, why he came to Ghana in the first place. Yeah.
Right. That's some great stuff. So how can the young generation actually contribute to this? Because you talk about us. I mean, we need to be part of the fights and part of the movements that are targeted at this. How can the younger generation be a part of this? I mean, to live out this vision, really.
Right. Okay. So for me, we are starting the whole project of rebuilding this Du Bois Center. We're going to build a library. We're going to build a museum. We are rebuilding his bungalow. So there's a lot of research that we need to do. Du Bois lived for 95 years. So there's a lot of exciting research that we need to do. And our idea is to make the Du Bois Center the mecca of all things Du Bois. If you want to write about Du Bois, if you want to study about Du Bois, you have to come to Ghana.
Right.
Okay, so we need young people to engage us. Researchers, we need researchers, people who are interested in research. Even here in Ghana, what he did, we don't know much about what he did and how he lived. So we're looking for young people to engage us. Come to our center. We have a staff that will be happy to welcome you all to become part of this extraordinary and exciting project of rebuilding. I mean, there's nothing in the world that honors Du Bois. Nowhere. in the world. And we have his mortal remains here.
Here in Ghana.
In Ghana, my brother. And all the things that he wrote and contributed to world peace and world unity. 1945, at dawn of the League of Nations, he went to San Francisco talking about independence for India. India. He was talking about it. I mean, so this man is a global figure, and people are beginning to realize who he was now. I get all kinds of emails every day about researchers from Germany, from France, who want to come to Ghana. So it's an exciting movement. Absolutely. And I want the young people to come to the center, embrace it, learn about Du Bois. We will try and have a relationship with the means of education, have a curriculum in schools that will actually teach the Du Boisian philosophy and all that. And I'm a businessman. I would say I'm a banker. All I'm trying to do is to get the process started in terms of the content of what we have to do.
Right.
Persons like Whitney and the rest of Kwame Appiah and Skip Gay or David Lewis. These are the people who are going to contribute to the content of what we are trying to build here in Ghana. So that's my little speech on that.
Great.
So
that's great.
All of you young people should come to the center.
We'll come. We'll come. All right. So this year we're trying to commemorate. Have an anniversary with some events and all of that. Tell us about that.
Okay. So tomorrow's Wednesday, right? So tomorrow Wednesday, we are commemorating the 62nd anniversary of the passing of Du Bois. We've been trying to do this for the past several years to bring awareness of the presence of Du Bois to Ghanaians and to the rest of Africa and the rest of the world. So what we're going to be doing is we've assembled a panel of Du Bois scholars who are going to talk about the life and works of Du Bois. So we'll have a symposium in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. We're going to have a symposium where Dr. Lewis and a great number of people who are going to be talking about sharing their thoughts on Du Bois. And then later in the afternoon, we're going to have a wreath laying ceremony where we're going to lay a wreath in his tomb. And we'll also talk about the future plans that we have for the area. And more importantly, and very excitingly, we have come up with an exhibition called the Du Boises in Ghana, a pictorial exhibition of some of the things that they did. Very exciting. We're gonna cut the saw for that tomorrow and open it up for the Ghanaian public.
And for me, that's one of the highlights.
Yes.
What stories will that tell, and how significant is that?
Very, very significant. It's amazing. Pictures of where they lived when they first came in here, the places that they visited, the people that came to visit with them, the reinterment, original burial, the reinterment of him in the bungalow. Just exciting. Very, very, very exciting exhibition. I don't want to give too much away, but you would just love it. And people that have seen it so far, everybody loved what we're trying to do here. And this is just a taste of what is to come for the new big museum that we're going to be building for him.
Yep. Wow, that's amazing. So who are some of the notable guests that are coming through? And is it open to the public or by special invitation?
Absolutely, it's open to the public.
Okay.
We've invited some special guests, the diplomatic corps, some key people in the government who are coming. We extend invitation to the presidency. We're expecting some of them to come tomorrow. And but it's open to the general public, and we're hoping that we can have more people, especially the young people. Now, I know that it's a weekday. It's a little bit difficult for a weekday event, but whoever can come, we'll be happy to have them and host them. And then later in the evening, we have a little dinner as well. So,
Yep. And the dinner is also open to the public?
Is it open to the public, myself? Yes, it's open to the public.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I should be there.
Please do come. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we have to go.
Okay.
And maybe finally, why should Africans today, especially young people, care deeply about Du Bois's legacy? Whitney?
That's a very big question to end with, but I think that it's really important for young people to see that here is this man who, despite his race, despite racism, he started out at a historically black college named Fisk University, and he was born in a small town in Massachusetts where my university is located, and he's buried in Ghana. I think that and for me, it's very, very special because I work in the place of his birth, and I work with Japhet and the Museum Foundation with where he is laid to rest and where he chose to move to. Yeah. However, the idea that a young boy from humble beginnings set out to use education and learning as a way to liberate Black people, to bring attention. And so for him, it wasn't just to translate Black life to non-Black people. It was actually to bring light to our accomplishments, the things that we had accomplished since slavery. And so that is kind of where he began. He studied Black life for Black people, and for us to read about ourselves from the pen of a fellow African American was a very unique thing that Du Bois contributed to the United States. So when young people think that they are voiceless, when young people don't see where they fit in society, etc., Du Bois struggled with that as well. And in some ways, young people might be able, if they read a little bit about him and who he was, especially his own writing, you can see his fighting for and trying to make sense of why things are the way the world is. And so I think that hopefully that might be an appeal. It's just, I feel like if you're exposed to Du Bois, you come to love Du Bois and you learn about Du Bois, and the more you learn about yourself and the world around you. So.
Right. Japhet, you have something to add?
No, lastly, I think either in 1945, Du Bois said, long before he knew he was going to come to Africa, he said, I trust the continent of Africa to bury me and my bones.
Really?
Long before he knew he was coming to Ghana, Du Bois said, I trust the continent of Africa to bury me and my bones.
And that's amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing. All right, so our time is up, and so we have to go now.
Thank you.
But I really want to say a special thank you to the two of you for coming and for sharing your insights with us this morning. Very interesting conversation. Is there a phone number you want to put across just in case somebody needs some clarity on some of the things that we're speaking about?
Do we have any phone number to give a call? But I do know that we have a website. If you Google the Du Bois Foundation, information will come
You'll get that information. So thank you very much, Japhet, and thanks so much, Whitney, for coming. You. Really, really grateful.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So that was Japhet Aryiku. Japhet Aryiku is the executive director of W.E.B Museum Foundation, and also Whitney Battle Baptiste, yes, Battle Baptiste, and they join us to talk this morning about the legacy, the unfinished business, the race, freedom, and unity, as we celebrate the 62nd anniversary of the passing of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois.